Going on? I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Welcome to drboycetv.com, the home for intelligent black people. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins, and I am here with Tiara KJ Williams, aka Miss Black Hollywood. And we have some really interesting stuff to talk about tonight. I know it's late night for a lot of you, but for those of you who are night owls who want to hang out and have intelligent black conversations, this is a place for you. Please hit the thumbs up button as you come in. Shout out the name of your city. Let us know that you're B1. And also, just a reminder, I want to also just go ahead really quickly and thank one of the sponsors of this podcast because you guys know we pay the bills by getting black-owned businesses that want to be promoted to help us to create independent black-owned media. If you need relief from arthritis, pain, inflammation, and stiffness, you can get all natural relief with Bone Factor Advanced Bone and Joint Formula. Bone Factor is a plant-based solution with 3 clinically proven ingredients that promote joint healing, reduce inflammation, and regenerate cells. Visit bodynaturalnutrients.com/B1. Use the code B120 to get a 20% discount on your purchase. So thank you for letting me get that out. I want to make sure our black-owned businesses get supported. If you have a business that would like to get a shout out on this podcast, just go to drboycefinance.com. All right, so Tiara, so we got Kevin Bell here from Atlanta and Donovan Lang from Singapore, and that's pretty cool. Singapore, that's awesome. Katie Michelle from Texas. Jonathan Majors, you and I were talking about Jonathan Majors, and it looks like Jonathan Majors is back in the media right now. Majors is kind of getting the business. He had kind of what appeared to be kind of a victory recently, where he filed charges against the woman who had filed charges against him. But now the media is kind of doing what the media does. They're kind of turning the tables on him and talking about this alleged abusive past and stuff like that. Have you been following any of this?
I have a little bit, but I've just seen it cool down for a little bit, like you said, and then it seems like today it's really going crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you with Majors, it's interesting. I know you're out there in Hollywood, and I know you are kind of in that acting space. Um, I'm really curious. Alicia and I speculate. We try to figure out whether or not Jonathan Majors has a career or not. And I know Ernestine Morrison, Jay Morrison's wife, who's a good friend of ours. She thinks that Jonathan Majors is done. She thinks Jonathan Majors was not going to have a career after all this is over. What do you think? Do you think that he's done? Do you think he's gonna be able to come back from all this chaos?
Yeah, I think with the news today, it's going to be hard. When I seen the articles surface today, I just thought, wow. I mean, more people are coming out. It's kind of looking real Bill Cosby-ish. They're painting him in a way that makes him look like the angry black man that literally just spazzes out at everybody. I saw something about his lawyer saying that it was like method acting or something like that. That's the if they experienced him in a way that was not nice, it was because he was, preparing for a role, and they're just they're trying. They're trying.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna tell you. I don't. First of all, let's do a quick poll. How many of you? Give me a yes if you feel like Jonathan Majors is being railroaded. Give me a no if you think that he's innocent. Let's just say innocent or guilty. If you think he's innocent and he's kind of being railroaded, put innocent in the chat. If you think that he's guilty and he deserves to be punished, put guilty in the chat. If you're not sure, put not sure in the chat. Because I think that these conversations are really delicate, right? Because you have legitimate victims in the world. You don't want anybody to get away with things they should not be doing.
Right.
You want to make sure that that justice is served. But it just seems to me that, especially when you talk about black men, there's just kind of a different set of rules, and that black men are actually the only group of people that I've seen, maybe white men to some extent lately, that can be just ruined by accusations and innuendo. I don't know. Can y'all give me a yes or no? Can you think of one single woman who has had her whole career destroyed because people just accused her of, or basically said, that she was doing stuff in the bedroom she shouldn't be doing? Because I mean, men ain't the only ones who could be sluts. Women could be usually when they out here slutting, there's a woman involved. So I mean, I'm just serious. What if we scrutinize like the sexual history, the relationship history of every woman, out here? What if we interviewed, like, took some popular woman, Oprah or somebody, and interviewed all of her ex boyfriends and just got them all together and did like a surviving Oprah episode. You know what I mean? Seriously, like imagine that.
I mean, the fact that I'm laughing is like because it seems preposterous, like it would never happen.
Right, but right, it seems preposterous, right? But that's kind of what they do with men. Like imagine, think about this. You know, you get to a certain point in your life, and you've met a lot of people, and some people are not happy with you. But then, so then people say, I'm going to compile every less than stellar moment in this person's life. I'm
Yeah,
going to find every person that is mad at that person. I'm not even gonna do any. I'm going to set the bar really low for whose stories I'm going to believe and not believe. If you have a negative story, I'm going to believe you, period, because I believe all women or whatever, right? So I'm going to then frame this person in such a way that they look like the worst person on earth. You can do that with anybody. You can make anybody look like the devil, right? And I just think about that because, um, I don't see that happening to women. I've never seen that happen to a white woman. Is there any white woman anywhere where they gathered like all her ex boyfriends or whatever and said, "Tell me about her. Tell us about the time when she was emotionally abusive." Right? And what does that even mean? People don't even know what that means. They're like, oh well, she didn't give me what I asked her. I asked her for the vagina and she wouldn't give me none. So that she a bitch. You know what I mean? Like that's what guys would do. Seriously. Right. So same thing. Why can't that happen on the other side? I bet you there are women who are like, oh, he's emotionally abusive. And it's like, oh, because he wouldn't buy you a Birkin bag, or because he liked another girl and you wanted him for yourself. Like seriously,
right.
it's crazy.
I agree with that. I mean, Boyce, I agree with you. I think that it's hard, right? Because like you said, the idea of like people being able to just come out of the woodworks. I mean, we've seen it with Bill Cosby, right? After 50 women, it kind of the media had made it look like, Bill was out here in the 70s just I mean, literally not doing anything but drugging women. Like, the story was looking like that's all he was doing all day long. When I'm sure that wasn't the situation, but people were popping up out of the woodworks. People can come out and say, I could have come out and say, Bill Cosby did it to me too, but I
Mhm.
wasn't born in the 70s. So, but I feel like my point is anybody could have come forward and made up a story if they were anywhere near.
Yeah, and it really shows you how racism gets in the way of our ability to really pursue justice. Because a lot of people look at it and they know what a high tech lynching looks like when they see it. And it kind of sucks because you really want to pursue justice. You want to do the right thing. But when you see that there's just this blatant bias where they're doing things to black men that they don't do to anybody else, it makes everybody kind of it triggers everyone, when it comes to rallying around the racist aspect of it to say, no, this isn't right. This guy, he's more than just whatever you say he is, and there should be evidence and proof. And then when you say that, people want to say, oh, or you're victim blaming or whatever when you don't even know who the victim is. Because I can tell you, I remember when I went to LA last time I was there. I was in a car where it was an electric Cadillac. I'll never forget it. And it was an Uber that took us to the airport. And my wife and I, the guy that was driving the car, said he worked for Hugh Hefner for many years. And he said, I drove around Mr. Cosby a lot because they were all going down to the Playboy Mansion. And let me tell you, I think I really think Hugh Hefner. I wouldn't be surprised if he was the original Jeffrey Epstein. I think that I wonder if he worked for the CIA because I feel like he got away with way too much. And
Yeah.
also, think about this. I mean, all these alleged crimes are happening on your property, and nobody ever came after your ass.
Yeah.
Seriously. And people don't know that the CIA is dirty. They've done some really dirty things. So, and I think Epstein was also CIA because what they do is they say, okay, men are scrutinized for their sexuality, and most people have something sexual that they're hiding. So what we do is we compromise them. We get them in a situation where they're vulnerable. We get them to do something, to engage in some vice. We invite them to do it. You lure them in, and then you have evidence that you can use against them and control them. And that's why I think Epstein invited all these significant, influential people to get on his plane and go to his little private island where he's got all these pretty girls. And then next thing you know, they're blackmailing you. So anyway, this guy in the Cadillac that worked for Hugh Hefner, he straight up said that he said, I don't think Cosby did most of that stuff. He said, I knew. He said, I watched, all the episodes, all the news reports. He said, I knew those women. And he said, I know what they were doing in the 70s, and it was a white guy. And he said, and again, he didn't know Cosby, like say his wife might know him or whatever, but he said he was always respectful. He was always a very nice person. He went out of his way to do good things for people.
Mhm.
But then that doesn't mean he couldn't have done something wrong. But he
Right.
was basically saying that those women were not the angels that they're portrayed to be. Many of them were addicted to drugs. They were prostitutes. They were into all kinds of stuff, and nobody questions any of that. So I kind of feel like you're right. I think that with Majors, it brings up kind of Bill Cosby vibes. I mean, what do you think? I mean, just as a person who lives in Hollywood and kind of you're in that sort of space, what goes through your mind when you're sort of seeing things like this happen?
I think that a lot of the women that you mentioned, even with Bill Cosby, I mean, I think we talked about this before, but we have to think about it. A lot of those women came out here to pursue acting careers. A lot of them are trained actresses. So you get them in a room and they can cry on cue, they can convince you in ways. And I'm not victim shaming or anything like that. I just know that there are women that live in this city that will do things and jump on the casting couch and be part of things that, you know, are less desirable. They'll catch themselves in situations. And I think that, when years later, when the person's name come up, it's easy to be like, yeah, he had me on the couch too. You know what I mean? Like when it was at the time probably consensual, but
Mm.
there's this opportunity. There's 50 women saying, hey, he abused me, and you're saying, well, I mean, I did have sex with him, I was there. It's easy, it just gets really, really, really murky. So I think that a lot of the women, they come here looking for an opportunity that they don't get. Maybe somebody wasn't cast to work on the Cosby Show. You just never know what their motives are. So I agree with you.
Well, by the way, everybody, you're watching drboycetv.com, the home for intelligent Black people. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins. And please hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, share, subscribe. This podcast is on Spotify. If you look up Boyce Watkins on Spotify, you'll find it. My special guest is Tiara KJ Williams. We're talking about Jonathan Majors and the recent developments with Jonathan. And also, I want to give another shout out to one of the sponsors of the podcast of tonight's episode, Aisha Verzi. Aisha Verzi is a financial advisor and a friend to the Black Business School. She's an independent licensed and insured insurance expert based in California. She can help you protect your assets and your legacy. She offers a one-stop brokerage for insurance services, including Index Universal Life, term with living benefits, whole life policies, and consultations for debt management and final expense, funeral planning concierge. So if you'd like to book something with Aisha, you can email her at Aisha at rverzi.com, VIRZI, or you can also call her at 626-340-5746. So thank you all for letting me share that information and pay some bills on this podcast. And if you'd like to have a shout out your business, just go to drboycefinance.com. All right, so Tiara KJ Williams,
Yeah.
I'd be curious to ask you this. So, would you say that you don't have to name any names because I know that you've been in Hollywood for a while and you know a lot of famous people and you've been in a lot of spaces where you've seen things happen and stuff like that.
That's
Would you
correct.
say that, like, if let's say I did a little challenge, the Tiara KJ Williams challenge, and I said I want you to name 5 famous actors or actresses that are household names who got their opportunity by laying on the casting couch, by tickling somebody's balls to get an opportunity, or doing something that would be shockingly unethical and really surprise you. Would you be able to pass that challenge? Would you be able to name 5 people that are like super famous, like everybody, all Black people know them, where you're like, yeah, I know how you got what you got? What would you say to that?
I can't say that because I wasn't there. I can't say that, but I could say use words like allegedly or rumored or something like that, right? I
Mhm.
could do that. But
Well, I'm not gonna ask you to name anybody because I ain't trying
no,
to mess you
I
up.
know, but I'm answering your question, just saying like, I mean, I mean, I've heard things, but I don't know anything except for what Corinne Steffens has said. That's
Ah,
right.
right.
She put it out there and she said I was tickling balls for everybody. That's the only
Well,
person I can confirm.
I think there's a long ball trick tickling tradition in Hollywood. I don't know if you saw. Did anybody else see this? Mel Gibson. Did y'all hear about Mel Gibson saying he was going to expose like some of the crazy stuff going on in Hollywood in a new documentary? Did anybody else hear about that?
No,
Yeah, but did you hear about that, Tierra?
no, I didn't. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, yeah. Mel Gibson is going to expose, or at least I saw a headline. Um, that he's going to basically expose, some of those little trafficking rings that he claims happens in Hollywood. He's going to do a documentary about it. So if Mel dies in the bathtub with a heroin needle in his arm, we'll know what happened. Because I think that in Hollywood, what's so funny to me is that there are people that really believe that Hollywood is as innocent and sweet as they portray themselves to be in these movies. Like they just kind of, and so then when it's like, oh, there's a director who made an advance to a woman and harassed her by asking her out too many times or pulling out his junk or whatever. It's like it's weird because it's like we all are like, oh my god, it's so shocking, but I really feel like, for example, you look like at a Harvey Weinstein,
Mm-hmm.
people knew for years, including people like Oprah. They all knew what that dude was up to. They knew that that was the cost of admission for a lot of women, and a lot of women paid the price.
Mm-hmm.
And really, what I really saw happening, honestly, is just this fundamental, like 100,000-year-old tradition that says, when you sleeping with somebody, they're gonna get special favors. They're doing favors for you. You're doing favors for them.
That's right.
And it's not just a one-way street. It's not like the man is always saying, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. Sometimes it's the woman saying, I need you to do this for me because I'm doing this for you.
Right.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the narrative we don't talk about. We don't talk about the times where a guy might, let's say, imagine this. Think about this. So let's say I'm a director and I got a girlfriend who happens to be an actress.
Mm-hmm.
And my girlfriend is doing things with me and for me and to me that other women are not doing.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants to be the lead actress in my next movie. And then, think about this. Think about the position I'm in. And I'm like, no, 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 dear. Everything must be above board. I can't get the impression of preferential treatment. So I'm gonna pick this other lady, who's not tickling balls, whatever. You know what I mean? This other lady who's just pure talent, and I'm gonna pick her over you. Think about how much chaos that would wreak in my relationship. She ain't gonna give me none no more. I'm kidding, but seriously though, like that's stressful. It's almost like a woman being in a relationship with a man who says, "Well, I'm your husband. You should give me money. I'm your husband. You should do XYZ for my business." Why is it not the same thing? Tell me.
That's correct. I agree. I agree. And to add, I will say this. There has been, I'll say this. There has been a time. I'm just gonna bring R. Kelly into the chat. I know he's disgusting. I know all the things that he's
But
done.
you can sing, so we
Right.
get it. Go ahead.
We get it, right? But I'm gonna bring R. Kelly in the chat. There has been times where I've hung out with Robert and with friends, and there has been a group or a flock of women. I didn't know the depth of all of the things, but I know that uh Robert never positioned me or my other friend. Like he just saw us as talented women. Like he gave us advice, like you know what I mean? He was just really solid to me, right? But I think that if there's a certain mindset that like she needs us, she needs me, I can get over on her. You know what I mean? Like then I think
Mhm.
that's where it gets a little murky. But like for the most part, I can just say there were women around. There were a lot of young girls around. Nobody looked like 12, but they all looked young and they all looked like they had come from cities, Chicago, from Texas, wherever they came from. And they were hanging around all of these celebrities. Like we were with Tyrese that night. I think we were just hanging, right? Well, all these different people, they wouldn't have been able to hang. They were telling us stories about them being with Jay-Z and all the Beyonce and all these people. I just don't think without R. Kelly, without Robert, there would have been an opportunity for them to have that kind of lifestyle. So for them, it was like a little bit of ball tickling was like, I mean, that's way better than me just going living in Texas, you know? But I could tell
Mhm.
that they were, we were all sitting around singing, like they were singers. There were girls that were really talented, but they just saw that as their way. So, just being a little obedient because they were obedient. That's what I did notice. Like if Robert said something, like they had to do it. I was like, wow. Like not like anything crazy, but like don't get off the tour bus. Don't just stay put until I say y'all can move kind of thing. And I was like, well, I don't know about this, but y'all can let me off this tour bus because I ain't come with, like it was that. But
Well, it comes, it almost like I feel like with the R. Kelly, and we can get back to Jonathan Majors. I feel kind of bad because now Jonathan's like, man, they compare me to R. Kelly and Bill Cosby, right? But we're really talking about black men
yeah,
and the way they're perceived, and I feel bad for R. Kelly because he was mentally ill, and
yeah,
this is one thing I've warned folks about on this platform a lot is that sometimes people will cover up your mental illness, your mental health issue
yeah,
with shiny objects and lots of money and lots of fame and everything else, and you don't realize that what you really need is help. You really, R. Kelly never needed more money and more women and more power. He needed somebody to get in his face, slap his ass, and take him to a treatment center so he can get the
absolutely.
help that he needed. He needed that 25 years ago.
Yeah,
Back when you think it's normal to marry a 15-year-old, right? But nobody did that, and this is what happens to so many black men and women when they get into that Hollywood space. That Hollywood space, I'm not a religious person, but when people call it demonic, if there is something that is demonic, it would be that, right? When you're in this space where you're getting all the temptations, you're literally making these deals with the devil where they're giving you way too much of everything that you want. It's too much of a gluttonous lifestyle. There's too much money, too many women, too many drugs, too many situations, just too much power, too many yes men, all of that, and it
mhm,
destroys you. It reminds me of like a fat kid that goes in the candy store and they say, you got $1 million, you can buy all the candy you want. It's fun for a while, but eventually he gets used to eating nothing but sugar constantly, and eventually he gets diabetes, he becomes obese, and he dies. Right? He becomes toxic because he's constantly consuming pleasure, and
yeah,
he becomes a pleasure seeker, and then a pleasure seeker has a hard time dealing with the real world. A person that's always had everything they want,
yeah,
they can't go to a regular life where they say, oh wait, I have a wife now, I have to be monogamous, and you're Eric Benet and you literally are a sex addict because you got women throwing their panties at you on the stage. He's not he can't be nobody's husband unless you part of a harem. That ain't this, like, this whole BS chaos that we believe somehow that a person who's been exposed to an absolutely gluttonous reality can suddenly just become a normal person like everybody else. That's like asking the fat kid who eats candy every day to suddenly become a vegan.
mhm,
It's gonna be a hell of a transformation. He gonna have to go through some detox to become a regular human being, and he probably still can't do it. That dopamine addiction. Thank you, Black Lexicon. That's the perfect term. It's a dopamine addiction, right? And that's why I want people to understand that, like, you don't want to go through life where you always get everything you want, because that makes you incapable of dealing with a world where you don't get everything you want, where you have to work for things, or if you look at some of the men that when they have women throwing themselves at them, they have a hard time with relationships because relationships require work and discipline, and your wife gets on your nerves and you can't do whatever you want. And guys that are used to getting everything they want, they can't go to that regular life. So when women marry a man like that, I feel sorry for them. I'm like, okay, are you on the reality plan or are you on the bullshit fantasy plan? Because if you're on the reality plan, you say, you know what, this is a guy who's had everything he wants. He's gonna have the women, he's gonna have the money, whatever. I'm just gonna get what I want, and everybody's gonna be happy. Or you go on the fantasy plan where you somehow think that this dude is going to transform from what he's been for the last 20 years and suddenly become this model little perfect husband that you're looking for. That's crazy. And what does happen is I think some women entertain a weird fantasy in their head. I say this, and I'd like to get your take on this because I'm sure as a woman you have some things to say. I remember asking a girl. She was young. She was like 17. She was a young lady I mentored, and I remember she loved Lil Wayne. She would listen to Lil Wayne songs. She thought Lil Wayne was the best or whatever. Me as a man, as a father, as a black man, I see a very talented man who's also deeply troubled. He's an inch away from being an R. Kelly, right? He literally had lyrics saying that I'll steal your girlfriend and chop her body up and mail her body parts back to you after I use her up sexually. Like, that's in a song. That's, I can recite the lyrics. That's why I was. It's amazing to me that women will still love this type of music. It doesn't make any sense to me. So anyway, so I remember asking her. I said, would you marry Lil Wayne if you could? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, he got three women pregnant at the same time. I said, do you think that he would be loyal to you? And she said, well, maybe for me, he would change. And I just want to say to women, like, stop that. Please stop that. Like, stop thinking. What, I don't know what curse God planted inside your brains to make you think you can change a man on that level. it just doesn't happen. It just, I mean, no, and I know that people can change, and I know we want to be hopeful and all that. And I'm just gonna say that from where I stand, and maybe this is Uncle Boyce talking and me trying to help people. Judge people for who they are, not for who you want them to be. If you're constantly comparing to who you want them to be, you're gonna be disappointed, pissed off, upset, mad, whatever. But if you just look at who they are and say, okay, let me take the good and the bad. Can I live with the bad? And if you like the good and you can live with the bad, you might find, you know what, the bad I don't like, but there's some good stuff over here too. So I'm just gonna chew the meat and spit out the fat. I think that's better than going into it thinking I'm gonna just make you into my little fairy tale. I don't get it. Tell me where I'm wrong, Tiara, because I'm not a woman. But what do you think about what I just said?
Yeah, I think that women can be a little, we there's something about a woman saying like, but for me. Like I've definitely been a woman that said that. Like, I mean, I'm smart, I'm funny, I got this, I got that, I've done this, I've done that, I've got this accomplishment. Like, of course he's gonna, change for me. But I was also very young. So I definitely said that as a young girl. But you just, that just comes with maturity. Like, you kind of just learn that after a while, like, to not uh you know not to do that. But I want to go back to what you said about I think that a lot of people, so there's two things. One is, it's hard to not look at entertainers and think like, just see the shiny part of who they are and what they do, right? You see them on stage, you see them in their element. I think one of the the sexiest things really is when you see this person. I'm gonna say a man because I'm attracted to men, but you see a man, he's like in his element. You see him doing great things in terms of he's using the gift that God gave him, and you're like, that is so sexy. You get caught up in that allure, but you really
Mhm.
don't know who they are when the lights are off or when the camera is off. And so, you know, it's like I said earlier, just what are you willing to trade? Because he could be, I was talking to somebody just last week, and a comedian, and he's so talented, and he's on TV shows and all these things. And when we sat down, he was like, "Man, I struggle with depression all the time," and I was like, "Wow." And we kind of just kept talking, and most artists are like that. You know what I'm saying? So I think people just get caught up in the glitz and the glamour of it all, and really don't look don't look for anything else. They're like, I'll just deal with it. I'd rather cry in a Maybach than cry in a Honda, or whatever, whatever it was that Chris Brown said a while back. And then also, I wrote it down. And then also, you said something about people being, always being like yes men, having yes men, and like always being, that dopamine addiction you were talking about. And I think that people are not whole before they get here. Like, they're not whole people before they get to Hollywood. They don't, you know what I mean? Like, they've suffered some type of trauma. I know, we were talking about R. Kelly earlier, and artists in general, but R. Kelly earlier, I know I heard it was alleged that he was molested by his sister, right? And she was molesting him when she was in that age range of 12 to 15. So naturally, I would think, if you looked at your very first sexual experiences were with a girl between the ages of 11 to 15, that would be what you would be attracted to. So it's not like, oh, you're a monster, you're horrible. It's like, literally, that's what feels like home to you. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I don't know. I just think that people, I just wanted to bring that up, but I just think that people are not whole before they get here, and and then all of these things are thrown at them, and they can't handle that. So you got to know who
Well,
you are here and
well,
in
well, I
these.
think that's a powerful lesson. Make sure you know who you are, and I think if you're going to send your kids to Hollywood and all that stuff, make sure they know who they are.
Yeah,
Because Hollywood tends to take advantage of you. It seems the most when you don't know who you are.
yeah.
Like when you don't have any concrete values and you're not committed to anything and you're just sort of trying to fit in. There was somebody that we were analyzing just today in terms of I got it. It's going to come back to me because Alicia and I were talking about it earlier. It's going to come back to me, but I'm
Rapper,
gonna
singer,
I'm gonna let you take the mic. Sorry.
rapper, singer, actor?
No, no,
Dancer.
no. It was oh gosh.
I hope you remember. Director.
It'll come back to me, but I remember we were talking about this person, and it was like, oh, I get it. This person didn't know who they are. They were just trying. Oh, I know what it was. We were talking about. I did a whole conversation this morning on drboycetv.com about Clarence Thomas, and it was actually done last night. And what I looked at was, people don't know Clarence Thomas at one point used to want to be a Black Panther. He was actually against interracial marriage, believe it or not. Now he's married to a white woman. He used to be married to a Black woman. Then he got, he got with Jenny, and his career took off. And what I figured out from Thomas when I read his whole bio is he's a guy that didn't know who he was, so he became a chameleon. He would just fit in and become whatever he needed to be
Yeah.
in order to fit in with the people that he was trying to get something from.
Yeah.
And because he's fascinating, his life is fascinating in the sense it's like, whoa, how do you go from there to there? Like this dude was in college participating in like rallies and protests. Like he was pissed when Malcolm X got killed. He had a picture of Malcolm in his dorm room, right? So he was a college student trying to find himself, and so he ends up having all these crazy contradictions. And um and then just as a funny side note, there was a federal prosecutor who wrote an article where she was talking about how she used to have threesomes with Clarence Thomas and some of the other lawyers in that they all worked in. Like they did some crazy stuff back then.
Wow.
Yeah. And the lady even said, she said, yeah, Anita Hill, she was part of our clique, and she's just a woman scorned. Right. That's like that's the whole conversation. Y'all can look it up. It's really fascinating. But yeah, you're right. When you have those people that just don't know who they are, I think those are the people more likely to fall into the traps of making bad choices, or maybe getting involved with drugs and alcohol, things like that. I remember I had a friend when I was a kid, and one time we were riding our bikes, and the little white girl said, "You're cute for a Black boy." And I remember, and we were 11, and he was all like, "Yeah," she said, "I'm cute for a Black boy." And I remember at 11, I was like, that don't sound right. That sounds like an insult, dude. But I'm 11, so I'm just figuring it out. I'm not Dr. Boyce Watkins. I'm just Boyce on his bike. And but years later, my friend, his mother sent him to an all-white school, and then he went to college and he joined an all-white fraternity, and he eventually ended up with a serious drug and alcohol problem. And I really think that some of it was linked to the fact that maybe he didn't know himself as well as he could have known he should have. In fact, this is what's so crazy. He married a white woman who majored in African American studies. Tell me that's not hilarious. And this white woman's messaging me. So at this point, I'm kind of doing my thing, my whole pro-Black thing. And when we were younger, he was like completely like against everything that I did. He thought it was too loud and radical, whatever. So that's how we ended up parting ways. And I'll never forget his white wife, who majored in African American studies, sending me Facebook messages saying, "Can you talk to him, because I want him to get in touch with his Blackness." And I said, this is like a Scooby Doo cartoon right now. Like this is hilarious. I mean, God bless him. I love him. If he sees this, I haven't talked to him for years, but if he sees this, it's not an insult or anything like that. But I really think that knowing yourself is so important as you go out into this world. When you go out in this world, you got to send your kids out into the world like a rock. They can't be like a leaf. A leaf will just blow whichever way the wind blows.
Yes.
A rock is gonna feel the wind, but the rock ain't going nowhere. The rock's like, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm planted. This is where I am. So you can be in it and not of it, right? So
Yeah.
you can go to Hollywood. You can say, okay, this is what's going on, but you can discern what you want to get involved with and what you don't want to get involved with.
Yeah.
So Tiara, before I get your response to what I just said, I'd like to, if everyone will allow me, please hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, share. Subscribe. You're watching drboycetv.com, the home for intelligent Black people. My special guest is Tiara KJ Williams, aka Miss Black Hollywood. And Tiara, at some point, don't let me forget, I want to put up your Instagram, your social media, your website, and everything, so people can get that. Before I do that, I'd like to also thank one of the sponsors of this podcast. For Lifestyle Clothing is a Black-owned business that delivers top quality clothing, offering a perfect fit and a clean look. They're all about building a business to pass on to future generations. Hence the name 4L, which stands for Live Life, Leave a Legacy. Check them out at 4lifestyleclothing.com. And there's two L's, by the way, two L's. So I've mentioned them several times. I never mentioned that there's two L's at the beginning. So everybody go check out forlifestyleclothing.com. If you'd like for us to give you a Dr. Boyce shout out, just go to drboycefinance.com and we will shout out your business. Tell Mike I sent you. Tiara, what's your social media? I'm going to make sure people get that. What's
Um,
your, is it at Miss Black Hollywood?
yes, MSBLACK Hollywood.
All right, at Miss Black Hollywood. Okay, so I'm gonna put that on the screen, and also everybody on Spotify, look up Miss Black Hollywood, MS Black Hollywood. Okay, so some of y'all were asking me about this. Some of you know, those of you who follow the platform know that today I did my first solo as an airplane pilot, and I'm pretty pumped about that. So that's the picture of me sitting on an airplane, looking like I know what the hell I'm doing. Um, and most of the time I do. But I tell you what, flying has been just a hell of a journey, and I appreciate everybody's support. And here's some other images. I put up a video earlier of the solo flight. My instructor was very nice, nice enough to actually videotape it for me. So I actually put some video of me taking off and landing. And then this is where they cut off the back of your shirt when you become a pilot. They cut off the back of your shirt where the back sweat is, like, because you get in the plane and it's your first solo, and I'm telling you, like, to fly the plane for the first time without your instructor, you know what you feel like, Tiara?
Mm,
I felt like a 4-year-old who got dropped off at daycare and my mama's not there anymore. You
yeah,
know, like that's how you feel lost. You're like, wait a minute, there's supposed to be a person in the seat next to me, and but they're gone. They're not here.
yeah,
So you have to answer your own questions, right? So you're like, like you're competent, like I was ready, but you're still nervous. You're like, shit, I gotta really be on point. So you sweat a little bit because it was hot, and so they cut out the shirt with the back sweat. So on the shirt, I had them cut it out. It was one of my favorite shirts, so it kind of sucked, but I did it anyway. And I wrote, "Mama, I did it," and I put the date on there, and I dedicated it to my mama because my mama is working through some health challenges, and I just wanted to let her know how much I appreciate her, and also that's me sitting there with my microphone on, trying to be a pilot. Yeah, so anybody who's ever thought about doing it, I can tell you it's a lot of fun. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work. But if that's something you want to do, I tell you, there's nothing that compares to that feeling of like knowing I can like go to the airport, get in my plane, and just be out. That's exciting, right? Because I've been in a lot of airports, taking a lot of flights, and I hate the lines, I hate the traffic, all that. And so just know I can like fly over all that with the airport that's like 10 minutes from my house is super cool. And one thing I'll say to everybody too is there's studies that show that when you get like in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, you should pick up a new skill maybe once every 5 years or so. And that
mhm,
keeps your brain active and whatever, right? Because it actually fights off stuff like Alzheimer's and all that in old age. So just a little tip to everybody, like, find something that you've never done and just jump in and do it. Like I saw the airport down the street from my house, Tierra, and I remember driving by it like a little kid. Like I don't know if anybody else does this, but I would see these little airports and I never think about them because they're not major airports. And I
yeah,
remember thinking, who's at that airport? Who flies into those airports? I want to use that airport because I don't like going to O'Hare. And I just called him one day and I was like, I went to YouTube University. I saw how long it takes to get your pilot's license. And so I just called them and I said, do y'all teach people how to fly? They're like, yeah, it's going to cost you $1 trillion. And so I was like, okay, it's not a trillion, but you have to pay every time you fly. You got to pay to rent the plane and you got to rent the instructor. The instructor is cheap. It's the plane that ends up costing money. So you got to save up your bread. But if you do it, it's super exciting. I'm really, really happy about it. So what are your thoughts, Tierra?
Well, I would just like to say on behalf of us and everybody, I'm sure everybody can agree with me when we say we are proud of you. And you keep saying, like, I'm trying to be a pilot, but you a pilot. Like, you went up into the air today and you landed and you did all of that by yourself. So we are extremely excited for you and proud of you. Right, everybody?
I have a whole flight bag.
He's ready.
I got an airman's jacket.
Listen,
And,
put on your airman's jacket. Can you
I
put it
still
on?
do. I'm aware. Well, it was too hot. It was
Oh,
hot. So I wear a t-shirt and shorts, and you have this little knee pad that you put on, and then you have this like a log book where you log all your flights. I've
okay.
logged like almost 40 hours of flight time. This
See,
is my headset. So every time I go fly, I take my little flight bag, and then they have this little funny calculator that you got to use. It's called an E6B, and this is where literally when you fly, you have to calculate everything from like the amount of fuel you're gonna need. Like a lot of pilots, like go the ones that go down. Some of them go down because they just run out of gas. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So there's like another thing is the FAA doesn't play. Like they really have a lot of restrictions and regulations and checklists. You got to do everything's got a freaking checklist because safety is so important. So one thing that flying has really done is it's made me feel much safer in an airplane because I know all the stuff the pilots are doing to make sure that they're 100% safe. So I would encourage everybody like don't be scared to fly. Like literally, they just do everything that imaginable to keep it super safe. So that's another thing that happened in my journey. So thank you for letting me get that out. I appreciate it.
Woohoo!
Yes.
Ow!
Okay, so let's get back to Jonathan Majors.
Okay, okay.
So everybody hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, share, subscribe. So let's kind of like put stick a fork in the Jonathan Majors conversation, and kind of say, here's the thing, right? So what I see now with Majors is that the tables have kind of turned against him. He originally it's like the tables turned in two directions, right? So on one hand, you saw where it was really bad for him, right? There he is, ladies. In case y'all want to see a cool picture of Jonathan Majors with his shirt off, there you go. Something for y'all to salivate about. And so on one hand, he gets the accusation, and that's looking crazy. It looks terrible, and it looks like he's going to go down. Then he comes back, and he files charges against the lady that filed charges against him. So it becomes he said, she said. It looks like he's regaining momentum. But then I saw a recent report in this is in USA Today. It's in all the mainstream media. So that tells me that there's a concerted effort here, right? You got to remember they kind of attack in the swarm, right?
Yeah.
So that tells me that it's not accidental. It's all kind of planned. So the Associated Press basically now is talking about a report. I don't know who wrote this report about all the terrible things Jonathan Major has done to people throughout his life. And it says here that as Jonathan Majors awaits his upcoming trial, police arrested him in March for assault and aggravated harassment, blah, blah, blah. They said new allegations are emerging against the Creed 3 actor. Majors, who could face up to a year in prison if convicted, is denying a scathing new Rolling Stone report alleging abusive past behavior on his part toward former classmates, crew members, and former romantic partners over the course of a decade. The 33-year-old's legal team has repeatedly maintained his innocence around all the accusations, blah, 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 blah. Rolling Stone published a report on Majors from a 3-month investigation which cites accounts from dozens of anonymous sources, some of whose names are withheld out of fear of retribution from the actor. So what do you think about this? What do you think about this idea that people can Tiara, can you hear me? Oh, there we
Yes.
go. What do you think about this idea that Rolling Stone, which by the way, Rolling Stone has done other reports where they've destroyed people, and one of those reports turned out to be completely false, by the way. I don't know if y'all remember, there was a report that they did, if I'm not mistaken, I got to double check, but I believe it was the University of Virginia, where they did a whole expose about a woman who claimed that she was assaulted at a fraternity party. And they all they did was they talked to her. They didn't talk to any of the people that were accused, and they did this whole big long article. The university reacted immediately, kicked the fraternity off campus. People were arrested. People were thrown out of school. And then they found out, they went back when somebody went to double check the work. They found out that on the night that she said that the assault happened, the fraternity didn't even have an event that day. There was nothing. So she specifically named the date. The date was wrong. Then they found out that there were other accounts that were wrong, and the story was completely false. And so we got to remember, Rolling Stone has done this before. I don't know what their agenda happens to be, but if I'm not mistaken, that story, and people forget these things, but I don't forget things. And I remember that this was a huge embarrassment for Rolling Stone magazine. So there we go. See, Chisel says, I remember that incident. Yeah, yeah. So what do you think about that? What do you think about this idea, Tiara, that somebody can just destroy you by saying we did an expose and talk to all these anonymous people
Right.
who don't have to confront their accuser, or vice versa, or you have no right to confront your accuser, but your accusers have rights to throw darts at you in the dark. I don't like that at all. It just stinks of corruption. What do you think?
Listen, I want to see the receipts. I know I'm wearing a Whitney Houston shirt, but I need to, in order for me to believe, I want to see it. I want to see the video. I want it, or it is all alleged. It is all like, hearsay. It's all of that. But I do think it's unfair because we've seen a lot of men go under because of this, that people can come back after 30 years, 10 years, decades long. Now it's decades long since he was 23. Now all of a sudden everybody is coming and saying, oh, yeah, me too. We were on set and he looked at me wrong and whatever. And they're coming, like I said, his lawyers are now saying, like, oh, it's because he was in the character or whatever. They're trying to like dispute some of the things that are being said. But I think it's unfair, and I don't think that I think that it should be innocent until proven guilty. Unfortunately, it's like if the media say you guilty, like that's it.
Mhm.
And people end up choosing, right? People
Mhm.
end up becoming the jurors, like people, just us, just regular folk that don't know nothing about nothing. We on the internet making comments saying, oh, I think he did it, oh, I think he doesn't, and not knowing how much that weighs in. But I definitely think it ruins people's reputation, it ruins their lives. He won't be able to work after this, you know
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that's just kind of a treatment that's only reserved mostly for black men. I think that what it sounds like they're kind of saying is that they're saying that you're not a good person. We don't like you. People don't like you. And I just really think that anybody would fail that test. If I give me a yes in the chat if you understand what I'm saying. Like I want you to give me a yes if you think that this is true. Everybody in this chat, Chisel Chipper and Black Lexicon and DDS and Mashari, what if I did an expose and I went and found every single person in your life who has an issue with you? Like I went to every ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend. I went to every neighbor who you might have cussed out, in 1995. I go to every person that maybe you hit somebody in the head with a lunchbox when you were 9. Do you think that I'd have the ability to make you look like a bastard? Do you think that I could make you look like a terrible person if I took every single situation where somebody had an issue with you or you had a disagreement with another person, or maybe you had a bad day, or maybe maybe somebody wanted something from you and you told them to get the hell out of your face? Like, do you think that I can make you look bad? What do you think? And I bring this up because I think we got to get past this age of the smear, this age of this concerted, effort where you're deliberately just going out of your way to get very biased evidence and information to make a person look one dimensional.
yeah,
That's it. Human beings are not one dimensional. I'm not going to say Jonathan Majors is a good guy. I don't know him. I'm
right,
not going to say that he never did any of these things. I don't know him. But I think that the accusers should get the same scrutiny that he gets, right? So
right,
if you're accusing him of mistreating you, then let's look at your past. Let's look at all your enemies. Let's look at all the things people might say about you, because people don't do that. Because I still remember, again, not to defend Russell Simmons, because I don't know Russell that well. I know I have worked with him, but I don't know him that well.
yeah,
But when I saw um, one lady that accused him of something from 1992, this lady was a lady I knew. This lady was a lady I knew, and I remember thinking, this is a beautiful lady, but I wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot pole. I was single at the time. I said I would never ever date this lady because she's the kind of person that makes bad decisions and then calls herself the victim. And I
mhm,
know she had an alcohol problem and a drug problem and everything else. And so years later, I felt like she was clout chasing because she's like, oh, Russell did this to me in 1991. And I'm like, there's no proof of this.
yeah,
And I would remember thinking, I know this lady. I don't, I wouldn't trust anything she said. And I remember I said something about it. I told people, I said, look, I know this person and I think this is a bunch of BS. So I think that what I'm just kind of sick of is this idea where people just think they can just jump out of the woodwork, throw out an accusation, and the accountability is only on the person who's being accused, right? So, like, say, for example, with this lady, if somebody were to scrutinize her as much as they scrutinize Russell, she would end up looking really, really bad, right?
right,
She's presenting herself as this damsel in distress and the innocent victim. No, we know you ain't innocent. I know you. I heard some of the stories, and I remember thinking, good Lord Jesus, I feel sorry for any man, because she was very beautiful. Because Russell, it's Russell Simmons. He gonna hang out with pretty girls. They all want to be around him. Um, but I learned a long time ago, don't trust a big button to smile. So I knew her, but I was like, oh Lord, she gonna get some men in trouble because this lady crazy, gorgeous but crazy.
I agree. I agree. I think they should have a different process for sure. And I think that the media, because the media is the media, and they just want to be on top of numbers and getting information out first. It's like, let's just get the news out first, and then we can worry about whether it's right later, right? Like, that's it's no longer journalism from back in the day where you had to go back and fact check. Man, listen, people can come out and say whatever they want, and depending on who you're talking to, you might have a small group of people that believe you. Like you could just literally say whatever you want, and it's so dangerous. But I think it's unfair. So I would just want to see the receipts.
Well, let me say this. And by the way, if everybody could do me a favor, please hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, share, subscribe. I just want to make sure everybody knows you're watching drboycetv.com, the home for intelligent Black people. This podcast is on Spotify. So if you go to Spotify and look up my name, you'll find it there. Also, some of you come here for investing advice. Our goal is to make you wealthier, smarter, and happier. So if you'd like to see some stocks I'm invested in, as well as get a list of AI stocks that are going to take off, get a training on how to make money without working, just text the word stock to 31996 and you'll get Dr. Boyce profit alerts texted to you on a regular basis of stocks that I tend to like, stocks I believe in. So just text the word stock to 31996. I'll leave that on the screen so you can find it. Also, you can follow Tiara on Instagram at Miss Black Hollywood, MS Black Hollywood. All right, so one, I looked up this Rolling Stone article about majors, and I know that you and I are talking a little bit longer than I thought we would, but I think it's fun to flesh out these conversations because they have huge economic implications for the Black community. It also is a warning for Black people in terms of the positions that you put your children in, especially your sons.
Mm-hmm.
I really think, like I know that if I had a son, I would probably not want him. Or better yet, how about this? If I have a son like Jonathan Majors, first thing I would do is I would give him advice. I would say, don't sleep with anybody that you work with. Who was it? I talked to another friend who told me that his dad told him the same thing. I know what it was. In fact, this is a story worth telling. I'm gonna share the story because it's all about entertainment. I was talking to a friend of mine not too long ago who worked for a major network, and he did sports. And one thing that he said was he said that when he was with this network, the CEO, he claims that the CEO, he's hanging out with him, and the CEO says, which of these women on the network would you like you know, to have sex with? And he said that he thought that was the craziest question in the world. And he's like, and so he said he danced around the question, he didn't answer it, and the guy kept asking him over and over, and he said, well, I don't want to talk. He kind of pushed it off. So eventually he said, okay, well, which one do you think is attractive? And he said I finally gave in and told him, yeah, well, I think she's kind of hot. And so he said, next thing he knew, he claims that this young 27-year-old woman was calling him and asked him to escort her to some award show. He said, what does a 27-year-old intern want with this, with me, a 45-year-old man? He didn't get it. So he agreed to go to this show with her. And he said, but he just felt like it was weird. So he said, when I got there, I just left. I told her I was going to the bathroom. I just left and went home. And the next day I called her and apologized. I said, hey, I wasn't feeling well, blah, 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 blah. And he said, I think they were trying to set me up. He said, I feel like they were trying to get leverage on me by
Mm-hmm.
getting me to do something that I shouldn't do. So they could then have this in their pocket to control me later on down the line. And I said, who was it that told you not to sleep with women that you work with? And I said, was it your father? He said, yeah, my father told me that. I said, that's crazy because my father told me the same damn thing. Yeah. So Black men, smart Black men and women know there's a history of getting Black men caught up, especially when you talk about messing around with snow bunnies or
Mm-hmm.
just sleeping around with different women, that you're working with or whatever. Like, there are the undisciplined men who don't make the smart choice. They get caught up. They get the Ime Udoka treatment or whatever. And then there are men who get, who are prepared, who understand. Like if you go on, so if I had a son, I would tell him, look, son, there's plenty of women out here that will love you, especially if you are, you have money or whatever. You don't have to sleep with the women you work with. And all those years I was at Syracuse University, I never slept with another faculty member. I never slept with a student, never even engaged the idea. And there was another faculty member that got hired the same time I did. And it's public information, so I can just talk about. I'm not going to say his name, but you could probably Google it. And we came in, we were the same age, and I never will forget. I will never forget that we were both young. And it's kind of like we were young faculty, like we were both about 30. So you're older, but you're still young enough where girls who think they're grown, maybe think they can have a chance. Because stop acting like women are innocent. We know women can identify the men that they like. And I had gotten the advice from my father, like don't get caught up. I don't know if he got the same advice. I remember we were on a panel together, and I remember watching him kind of flirt with the women and talking about going out and party and all that. I didn't do all that. I was working. I was studying. And years later, I want to say 6 years later, it gets revealed that he was sleeping with a student that was in his class. And 6 months after they slept together, it happened. He thought it was over. 6 months later, she filed sexual misconduct charges against him. 6 months later, and they put this dude's face on TV, his mugshot on TV. Think about it. He's a PhD, a professor. They had this dude's mugshot on TV like he was OJ Simpson.
Mm.
And when I saw that, Tiara, I said, thank God for good black fathers who warn you about this stuff. I thought about what my daddy said. And so when I see this happening with Jonathan Majors, I just want y'all to just understand. I'm not saying that he's innocent. I'm saying they don't do this to white women. I can't think of a single white woman ever where the Rolling Stone has done a whole expose of how emotionally abusive she was. I mean, seriously, if you want to talk about emotional abuse, women can be emotionally abusive too. Right?
Absolutely.
Am I right or am I right? Like women can be emotionally abusive too, and you can't act like we don't know emotionally abusive women. How many of y'all in the chat? Give me a yes. How many of y'all know one woman who was emotionally abusive, yelling at people, barking at people, irate, manipulating people, harmful, whatever? Women. In fact, I would dare to say that a woman, when she's emotionally charged, can be more abusive than a man because women are stronger emotional creatures than men are on average. Women kind of understand how to do that emotional manipulation thing where we're all like confused and we're trying to remember. She's memorizing, like just the fact that y'all can memorize conversations at some sort of freakish level where you will recite something that we said 6 months ago word for word, and I don't remember us talking about it. That is stressful as hell. I hate that. That's like getting hit upside the head with a baseball bat. So how come there's no exposés by Rolling Stone about women who are emotionally abusive? What do you think?
That's just not the way our society works, boys. Unfortunately, I mean, that's just what it is. I really don't have an answer for that, but I do believe that this is just what it is. This is the culture of the way we handle situations like the. I'm not sure where it came from or where it started or who was. I mean, Emmett Till was the first story I heard that was like this, where a woman could say something and 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 something bad happened to the black man. Like it feels like that was the first story I probably ever heard a long, long, long time ago of somebody just being able to say whatever. And it really hasn't changed since.
It's crazy. So let me let me read some of this. And I'm gonna read this, and then I'm gonna move on because I gotta get up early for flight training tomorrow. So I should probably, but I'm having fun with this conversation. Everybody, hit the thumbs up button, please. Thumbs up. All right. So here's what Rolling Stone has said about Jonathan Majors. Again, with no proof or evidence, just a bunch of innuendo and a bunch of interviews with anonymous people that refuse to actually make their claims public, or better yet, to reveal themselves. They said during this 3-month investigation, Rolling Stone spoke with more than 40 people who have known Majors during his time in graduate school, his Hollywood career, and his romantic relationships. Many describe Majors as being complicated, unpredictable, and a sometimes violent man who can switch from charming to cold in a flash. All the sources for this article requested anonymity, citing fear of career repercussions or personal retribution from Majors. Some claim they were prohibited from speaking. My only response can be that I am silenced by an NDA he had me sign. Well, if you signed the damn NDA, then why are you violating the NDA? I'm sorry. Really, that right there, you're telling me that you're not an ethical person. You're a liar.
Right.
You're literally, if you're violating your NDA, then that means that you are a liar. You signed it making a commitment that you're going to keep things to yourself. And now you're violating the NDA, but yet you somehow think that you're going to have all this credibility that you clearly do not have just by virtue of the fact that you're violating the NDA. And so I'm going to keep reading. But my thing, too, is with Jonathan, just look, if he punched somebody in the face, I'd like to know about it, but I'd also like to see some evidence that this happened. And
Yeah,
I'd also like to know why a police report was not filed.
that's
It
cool.
ain't hard for white people to file a police report if a black man punches you in the jaw. Seriously. So why is it that years later it's like, well, he hit me and he knocked my toofuses out, and that was so unfair. He just such a mean black man. Well, then why didn't you call the cops? Obviously, it wasn't that serious. So I don't understand why this is rocket science for people. Let me keep reading. This is from Rolling Stone. Their story suggests a pattern of alleged physical, mental, and emotional abuse. See, there we go. That's when they're expanding the definition of abuse so they can capture him under the umbrella of being a bad person. That's what they're trying to say. That he's a bad person.
Right.
Um, and so again, physical, mental, emotional abuse. The main abuse I'm looking at is the physical. Show me the physical. Mental and emotional, anybody can claim that. Let me give you an example. Let me show you. Let me just Tiara. I'm about to turn you into a mentally and emotionally abusive person. Got it?
You be off the chain in the middle of the night. Yes, go
All
ahead.
right, you ready? Okay, here we go. I'm gonna make you into an abuser. Tiara, I need you to go on your bank account and get me $20,000 in Cash App it to me right now, girl. Could you do that for me, please?
No, I'm not about to do that.
Well, why not? I had you on my podcast. I invited you here. It should cost you $10,000. Like, look at all these people that are going to be watching this video. You owe me 10 grand.
No,
Pay me.
you didn't say that before. You didn't
Well,
say that.
but no, but you understand how valuable. No, stop that. Stop that. I want my money.
No,
Pay
I'm not
me.
gonna give you
How you gonna take something? I offered it to you, but the only reason I offered it to you is because you intimidated me.
lower
You
your.
emotionally manipulated me and tricked me into offering you a chance on this podcast because we understood that you were gonna pay me and compensate me, and you didn't. So
No,
you owe me $10,000. Pay me.
first of all, no, we didn't. You called me and said, "Hey, you want to come on my podcast?" And I said, "Sure." So you didn't say
I feel
anything.
I feel like you're being abusive right now, Tiara. You're hurting my feelings. I'm gonna cry. So you're emotionally abusive now. You're an abusive person because I asked you for money, and I only let you on my podcast because I thought that you were going to pay me, and you didn't pay me, and now I can't pay my bills, and my children are going to be hungry, and it's Tiara's fault because Tiara is the evil bitch who refused to be considerate of my feelings,
Sure. And I
right?
put child support a lot too.
so so do you, so do you understand how I literally like I could and so think about this, right? I want y'all to really go with me on this. Give me a yes if you understand what I'm saying. I could go take that story, and if I know people that know her, I could go ruin her reputation. I could be like, you know what? Tiara used me. She led me to believe that she was going to compensate me by coming on my podcast, and I did it thinking that she was going to do the right thing, and I was innocent. If I had known she wasn't going to pay me, I never would have done it. But think about that. That's what people do with sex. They'll literally say they'll literally take that with consensual sex. They'll say, I only did it because I was so intimidated and afraid that I would lose my job or he wouldn't advance my career and give me opportunities if I didn't sleep with him. And it'll literally be something where maybe she even offered to do it. And there's no accountability. That's the point. I invited you on my podcast, right? I could easily say that you manipulated me, you tricked me, you misled me, right? If you were a man and I'm a woman and I know how to cry, right? Tears are very powerful, especially Becky tears. Becky tears are the most lethal weapon known to man. Becky tears have been responsible for the deaths of probably 100,000 black men, right? Becky tears can move a nation and destroy entire civilizations, right? So if I had the weapon, see, it looks kind of silly with me doing that with you as a man because people don't believe men when we say things like this. But if I was a woman and you were a man, if you were me and the roles were reversed, and let's say you were a white woman, you could easily do that. You could easily be like, I can't pay my rent now because Dr. Boyce would not help me. And I know this. I know this very well. And let me tell you the real life example of this that I saw was there was a lady who was on Fly Nubian Queen, right, which is a platform that we share and we let people use or whatever. And this lady was going around saying Dr. Boyce manipulated me, and they were like, "Well, how did he do that?" Well, I was on Fly Nubian Queen, and I did a bunch of videos, and he never paid me. And they're like, oh my God, that's so terrible. And Corey Holcomb, the comedian, that raggedy ass Negro that we were talking about before, he literally, that's what he brought up. He's like, you have these employees that you never paid. And what they never talk about is the fact that I never agreed to pay you nothing. I let you use it for free. your content wasn't even that good. I was just being nice. I never once offered anything. I never offered compensation. So how are you saying I'm a terrible person because I didn't give you something that I never offered you in the first place? You offered that to yourself, and you understood the power that women have. We don't talk about the power of women, the power that women have of going and taking a narrative and making a man look however they want him to look. And it's in some cases it's used for, in the case of righteous justice and victimhood, but in some cases it's used as a weapon of revenge,
Yeah.
right? Like, this dude didn't give me what I wanted, so I'm going to go and smear him by making myself look like I'm one of his victims, right? And in fact, I think somebody even jokingly said, they said, "Yeah, we're going to do a documentary called Surviving Boyce Watkins." I'm like, okay, fine. And you could probably do that, but it's like that's the challenge that men go through, and nobody hears that, right? I don't talk about it much. I just don't get into it because it's life. But Kevin Samuels did a video like that where there was a lady that I worked with, actually Yvette Carnell. I worked with Yvette. I let her use my channel for free for years, and she literally was like, "He never paid me anything to use my channel." I'm like, "Well, nobody's ever paid me to do a YouTube video. What are you talking about? Like, what in the world makes you think?" And we never talked about that. Like, so now you're going back and you're saying he never paid me when he never agreed to pay you. I never agreed to pay you. Like, so Kevin Samuels, again, I disagree with Kevin on a lot of stuff. You and I've talked about that, but he did a whole video about it where he said, number one, it doesn't look like he agreed to pay you anything, and number two, he was helping you. He gave you exposure. He didn't have to do anything for you. You never did that for him. So I just really think that we as a society, what is happening, and I want it to happen more, is I think we need to have conversations that are fairer and more balanced toward men. And I hated the idea of invoking my own experience into that, but I think it makes it more real to just sort of say, yeah, this is happening. And I think with Jonathan Majors, it sucks because he might really be a bastard. He might really be abusive. He might really be hurting people. But that will never be seen now because people can see through the BS. They know media manipulation when they see it.
Yeah.
So Tiara, I'm gonna let you get the last word, and then we can bounce on out. What are your thoughts?
Well, first and foremost, I can say that from working with boys, like when you said that you were going to pay me and we've worked together, we've partnered on things, we've made movies together, all of the things, I've always been paid. Let me just say that. Let me start the conversation off that way. I have also been offered a position on Flannel Being Clean, but that was like also for exposure. So you did say that up front, like, hey, you can have my. I love that you always like, hey, if I have an audience, you have an audience. So here, use it, right? So I'm gonna say that out loud as well. So I can vouch for that. And in terms of Jonathan, are my last final words on Jonathan. Um, I think it's interesting because we didn't talk about this, but my only qualm with Jonathan in this whole situation was that he, kind of like, I'm not sure what the deal is with him and Megan Good, but now like all of a sudden he's went and got a black woman that is
Ooh,
and is holding him down. And
preach.
I've met Megan before. It's so interesting because I like Megan Good a lot. She's come into my office before. We've sat down and done an interview before. Like like I like her a lot. And I think she's a great girl. So I feel like it's so interesting that now he has this black woman next to him when he was on his way up, he was with this young lady with Becky, whatever her name is, Grace. I think her name is Grace.
How you gonna
And
call her Becky?
we're gonna call her Becky though. I'm not gonna give her a real name. Like, but right, I'm not gonna give her a name for
You're
real.
so racist. You're such a
but
racist.
But I don't. I that was my only qualm. Is like he waited until after he got into a whole bunch of mess to come back to black women for us to hold him down and all of that. And I know this is such down on the topic, but he is sporting her around, and
Mm-hmm.
he is, you know, it's kind of weird. And people, and actually, Megan Good has been receiving a lot of criticism for her even being associated with Jonathan in this way. So it's really like bad for her reputation right at this moment. But
Mm-hmm.
she's compromising that and she's going out on a limb for this person. And so I just think that that's interesting. But what I'll say is to Jonathan is stay away from those white women. Jonathan, stay away from the white women.
Boy,
and
you best stay away from them white women's boy.
But I'll just say that, just I mean, at this point, I'm just gonna pray for him because I'm not sure. In Hollywood, we're always like, I wonder who he pissed off because, like, why are they coming for him like this? Like, I know it's
Mm,
always a thing on the internet, like Bill Cosby was trying to buy NBC and do all these things, and then that happened. So I just,
yeah.
I just wonder, like, what is happening and why him and why is he like subjected to all of this, because I know that I've seen white men go through, be drunks, and like Robert Downey Jr. is always, back in the day, he was always in the media for doing something or saying something or being drunk or being an addict and walking off sets and being rude and all of these things.
Mhm.
But it didn't ruin his career. He was able to come back and recover and be successful. And unfortunately, we don't get that same love and opportunity. So hopefully this doesn't ruin his career like it did. I love him too. I saw him not too long ago. Nate
Oh, Nate Parker.
Nate
Oh man.
Parker. Like,
Yeah.
I saw Nate somewhere before and I was like, man, where you been? Like, we miss you. And he was just so gracious and appreciative. I said, man, we still support you, brother. But it's a real thing. Like, I just hate that afterwards they fall so far from grace, and then they have to go and just kind of work silently or work, on smaller projects. So that's it.
You opened a can of worms for me on that one. I got a couple things to say about that. Before I do that though, do me a favor, please hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, share, subscribe. I want to also mention one of the sponsors of this podcast, Dr. Q's Fresh Breath Club. Dr. Q is a black dentist in St. Louis who is a good brother who cares about the black community. And if you want to take care of your fresh breath needs, they have an all natural at home dental care subscription with bamboo toothbrushes to mint and charcoal toothpaste tablets and charcoal teeth whitening strips. They got you covered. So you can go to drqsfreshbreathclub.com for a standard adult subscription for just $12.50 a month and get a free gift in your initial subscription box. And also, you can become an affiliate and actually make money. So if you got friends who brush their teeth, Dr. Q's Fresh Breath Club can help you out. If your friends don't brush their teeth, then you might want to introduce them to toothbrushing as a way to help their dental health. All right, help them out. Help them out, y'all. All right, and also I'm speaking with Tiara KJ Williams, aka Miss Black Hollywood. You can follow Tiara at missblackhollywood.com. And also, those of you who like to get investing stuff from me, you can get free Dr. Boyce profit alerts on stocks that I like, things I want to invest in right now by texting the word stock to 31996. Just text stock to 31996. I'll text you tons of information, and I can get you on the 30-day investors plan where for free that will get you moving right along in terms of your ability to grow and build wealth. All right, so so one thing I want to mention, let's go back. I had to, I was listening to what you were saying, and and I think that that's important for us to address. The whole Becky-itis situation, um, and this idea that some of these people just think that they're white. You know, I think that Jonathan Majors, when I look at Jonathan Majors and even Nate Parker, who I love them both. I think they're both very talented, and I root for these guys. I really root for these guys. If I were to talk to them, I'd be like, you know, you ain't white, right? Like, you know, you're not. I know that the world has made you comfortable, but you know, you're not white. And I bring this up because if you look at both of their backgrounds and the things that ended up ultimately harming, if not destroying, a lot of what they built, it involved their interactions with a white female. Nate Parker, I think Nate Parker's wife is white. That woman that he was accused, it was the craziest thing. This lady said that their sex many years ago in college was non-consensual. There was a recording, so-called smoking gun, if you recall, saying, "No, here's the proof," and there was no proof in the recorded conversation that she illegally recorded. Right, broke the law to do this. Nobody talks about that, but she illegally recorded their conversation.
Yep.
In the conversation, he's basically saying, hey, you were drunk and you were participating, you were doing this and you were doing that. And that just fits so many other narratives that are out there where a woman who doesn't want to be held accountable for her choices, her behavior, ends up saying, well, I'm going to call it this because I don't want to deal with the stigma of my own choice. I'm my own worst enemy, but it's harder for me to blame myself than it is for me to blame the black man, because everybody's been blaming the black man since the beginning of time. So pay attention now. Years later, everything's kind of gone and dropped and done. But
When they're
years later,
at the
right,
top of their careers, go ahead, boys. At the
yeah,
top
at the top, yeah, right at the peak of his career,
of, mhm,
people start digging up this old story because the lady ended up killing herself, and somehow they blame Nate for that. And the reason I did that example with you earlier, Tiara, where I was like, "Yeah, Tiara, you're making me. I can't pay my bills and I can't take care of my kids now because of you." And then
mhm,
imagine if I go and jump off a bridge and I say, "If Tiara had given me my money, I wouldn't have jumped off a bridge." Like I can't do it. It would look crazy for me to do that as a man,
yeah,
but a woman, especially a white woman, can do that. She can say, I made all these choices, and it's not because I made those choices, it's because a man made me do it,
yes,
especially a black man." And so when this lady took her own life, which was very sad, very unfortunate, I hate seeing that happen, they
yes,
somehow claimed that Nate Parker was responsible for that. And that was enough to ruin his movie.
yes,
Now, that was an injustice. That
yes,
was wrong. That was the cesspool of society. That's what racism looks like. That's where America's accountable for its demons. But then if I'm talking to Nate and I'm talking to Jonathan,
mhm,
I have an honest man-to-man conversation, and I would literally slap them both in the face and say, "You know, you're not white, right?" You
right,
know, like, and I wanted to do this with guys I knew in college who would go just run with the white girls and do whatever, you know. And I would be like, "You understand you're playing with fire, right? You live in Emmett Till country, right? Like, are you serious right now?" So, to me, what I see honestly is, as a guy who's an outsider. You know me, I'm an outsider to Hollywood. I'm an outsider to mainstream media. I don't want to be mainstream. You know, when people say, "Oh, well, one day you'll be mainstream," that's not a compliment to me. Like, why in the hell would I want? I'm a smart man. I think if I wanted to be mainstream, I could have figured out how to do that by now. I don't want to be mainstream. I want to be disconnected from all of that. Um, as an outsider, I look at those guys who do go mainstream, and it feels good, right? It's like an affirmative action program. Like, affirmative action felt really good when white people would give you these jobs and make things easy for you. You don't have to go through the trouble of starting your own business. You don't have to go through the trouble of building independent wealth. You don't have to go through the trouble of developing your own institutions. But then at the same time, you're very vulnerable.
mhm,
You're very vulnerable. You know, when they decide they want to just, cut the cord, then you're done. You're hanging by your neck, and you're like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" Well, what you could have done is remember that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and you could have remembered that you can't let the illusion of inclusion lull you to sleep. We got too
mhm,
many black people where the illusion of inclusion lulls them to sleep. Next thing you know, this dude's running around the white girls. "Oh, racism's gone, dude. Racism isn't real." And then racism comes in, slaps you in the face, punches you in the head, and kicks you square in your balls, and then you're sitting here saying, "Oh my God, woe is me." And I'm sitting here saying, see, this is why, people like me who seem to be paranoid, now I'm your best friend. Now I'm the guy you're coming to. I've seen this so many times, Tierra, where somebody would literally, when I joined the faculty of Syracuse, I kid you not, there was a lady, she's a friend now. I don't have anything against her, but she literally told me straight up. She told me that she was deliberately avoiding talking to the other black people in the faculty because she wanted to fit in with the white people. She didn't want to be seen as hanging out only with the black people. So I was like, well, screw you too. You don't want to talk to me. I don't want to talk to you.
mhm,
And so years go by, and this lady, I'm thinking that she's living the life. I'm thinking I'm the crazy one. I'm like, well, maybe I'm being too radical, and maybe I'm old fashioned, and maybe racist. So I'm thinking that she's really getting rewarded for this whole assimilationist agenda that she put herself on. And then one day, out of the blue, she comes and wants to talk to me because they were treating her so bad. She was going through so much shit. And I ended up helping her. I became kind of like, remember Devil in the Blue Dress, where Don Cheadle was like the crazy cousin that like would like go and do all the dirty work that Denzel couldn't do. I
mhm,
became like her crazy cousin. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm under no illusion that white people like me. I know they don't like me. I'm an intelligent black man who tells the truth, so I know that's not going to work. So what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to support you. You fight from the inside, I'll fight from the outside. You be Martin, I'll be Malcolm. I want you to succeed. And that's what happened. So she ended up actually getting tenure, and they were pissed. They were heated about it. But
mhm,
I remember my chairman said that she got tenure because you didn't. Like they knew, because you raised so much hell and called them racist and told them about themselves and brought up their whole hiring history and everything else. They were under so much fire, so much scrutiny, that they were like, okay, let's give her a promotion so that we don't have to deal with this. We can tell him that he's wrong. We're not really racist. And
Yes.
so really in that story, I feel good. Like that was black people working together. But at the same time, it reminded me of how there's so many black people that are just scared, right? And then also we believe the lie, we believe the myth, we become dependent on these white establishments and these white institutions to sustain us. And then when white folks start acting white, we act all shocked and surprised. There's nothing about Nate Parker's situation that surprised me at all. Right? There's nothing about Jonathan Major's situation that surprises me at all. I will defend these guys to the nth degree. But what I'm telling you right now, black people, is you must train your sons. Every black boy in this country needs to be trained on how to have his own business in case plan A does not work out. In fact, his business should really be his plan A, but at the very least, he should have a plan B. A lot of these brothers ain't got a plan B. So they get caught up, something goes wrong, they slept with somebody on the job. Next thing you know, you're being called a predator, and they throw your ass out there and you have nowhere to go. That's what I'm seeing. That's my narrative. I'm done. I've talked so long. Do you have something to say, Tiara? Please go ahead.
Now you were you gonna say something about the whole Megan Good thing? Him bringing Megan.
Oh yeah, let's bring back Megan Good. Okay, so Megan Good. Damn, I can't believe I went on that whole tangent. Didn't even bring up the thing I was originally thinking about. Megan Good. Yeah. So here's another little Negro tactic that we see so often is we abandon the black woman, we ignore the black woman, we go to places like LA where you got literally these weird black men who don't even date black women at all.
They don't play black women ever. Go ahead. I'm
That's
sorry.
sick. That's sick. Just know if you're watching, you in that category, man, get you some mental health, like mental help. Seriously, like see a therapist, dude.
Yeah,
I
legit.
get it.
Like,
Go ahead.
legit.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just about to say, for real, legit. I could walk by a black man at a grocery store and be like, "How you doing, brother?" Not even like trying to talk to him, and he will keep walking. And then a second later, I'll see him around with Becky, and I'll be like, "Oh," but it wasn't even like that. Ain't like I was like, "Hey," like I didn't. I just spoke.
Yeah, I admit I don't like it. I think it's. I don't understand it. I don't know where it comes from, and I think that it's one thing if you date outside your race. I mean, we're not here to judge that. I'm not here trying to be I'm not trying to be Umar Johnson or nothing up in here, right? I'm not gonna like yell at you for, the fact that you dated a woman who was not black. But the fact that there are people that are just trained to not even give black women a second look or a chance, to me it kind of speaks to this idea of kind of it's just something's wrong mentally. Like you're understating the significance that the black woman has had in terms of defending your black ass for the last 400 years. Like black women literally were the ones who would like hide you in the basement so massa couldn't come kill you because you stole an extra piece of chicken or whatever. Like they it goes back to slavery. And so when I see Jonathan Majors sitting next to Megan Good, because suddenly the world has reminded him that he's not a white man. Um, I don't like that because it kind of speaks to the idea that sometimes the black woman becomes your second choice when I believe she should have been your first. And this is all personal. I think about, I've told you, Tiara, about the conversations I had with Kanye West, and I straight up said I would have married a Kardashian. I think that's insane. Why would a man marry a Kardashian and think it's going to end well? The lady is a porn star. Like seriously. So your kids are going to be little Kardashians. That you can get mad about it, but if you didn't want to be mad about it, you should have married a Donda. And I told him, I said, I married a Donda. I married a woman like your mother. She's a black woman. She's a college professor from the south side of Chicago, just like Donda was. That's the kind of woman that's held us down since the beginning. And I know that my wife, again, she's gone through stuff that black women go through. She's got some of that in her. We all do, a lot of us do.
Yeah.
But I know that she will go to battle with me, right? I know that when the world has tried to attack and smear and everything else, I mean, it ain't like if, it's when, like it's happened. I've had people come after me. Right now there are people that maybe say crazy things or whatever, like Corey Holcomb or whatever. People that, trying to say whatever they're gonna say. That's what people gonna do. My wife is like, I got you 100%. Screw them. So me and you against the world, and so I think that while we might give black women a lot of flack for the fact that they, sometimes they can show up in various ways, some people are really, I think, through hip-hop music or whatever, really tarnishing the image of the black woman by presenting her in a way that is not accurate or ethical. There are a lot of black women that, you can say that a lot of black women are just kind of battle tested too. Like the ones that really understand racism, they're just kind of they're not little butterflies that are just going to fold. Like they, if they really have your back, they're going to have your back to the nth. And so maybe that's what Megan's showing, or maybe Megan's just trying to attach herself to Jonathan because she sees this as some sort of opportunity, right? Like I'm gonna connect to him so that if he does get his career back, it'll create more opportunities for both of us. I have no idea what's going on there. What do you think? I mean, would you do that? Would you be
No,
taking this picture that Megan's taking with Jonathan, or would you say
no,
no thanks?
no thanks. I would say no thanks for sure. That nothing about that looks good for her. Like I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say Megan doesn't need it. Like she's working, she's looking good. She fresh out of a divorce. Like she's good. She's been working since she was like 8 or 7 or something. Like something crazy. Like she's been working for a really long time. So I just don't think that she needed this. So whatever this is, it's personal, and I think she really wants to do it.
Okay, okay. Well, shout out to them. I hope that it works out for them. And we need to go. I need to go to bed. I got to get up early.
Yeah.
So I have really enjoyed this conversation, Tiara. I want to say thank you very much for hanging out with me. This is Tiara KJ Williams, aka Miss Black Hollywood. I'm gonna give you her social media information. Everybody, go follow Miss Black Hollywood on Instagram and look up her work. She's made a lot of good movies, Till Death Do Us Part, and some other great films and projects that we've worked on together. I mean, you've done a little bit of everything, and so at some point we got to like sit down and really talk about all the stuff you've done. Because I think she's a great person to learn from and listen to if you want to learn how to navigate the entertainment space. And also, I want to remind everybody the All Black National Convention is happening in Atlanta, October 20th. So if you'd like to join us, the All Black National Convention is the number one gathering of B1 people and intelligent Black people throughout the world. So if you'd like to be a vendor, sponsor, or just get a pass for you and your family, go to allblacknationalconvention.com. We will be out of passes very soon because we have pretty much almost sold out. So go to allblacknationalconvention.com. You can lock in your pass, and you're gonna love it. We have 45 experts from all different walks of life in the Black community that are there to solve problems. And I guarantee you, when you walk away, you'll be a different person. Last but not least, if you'd like for me to send you Dr. Boyce profit alerts on stocks that I'm invested in, help you get onto your investing journey, I'll send you a copy of my $5 a day investing plan, as well as my list of AI stocks and a lot of other things, my training on how to make money without working. Just text the word stock to 31996. Text stock to 31996. So thank you, Christina Littles and Felicia and Mashari and everybody else. I appreciate you, and thank you all for the congratulations on the whole solo pilot thing. I'll keep you guys posted on that, and I hope you guys have a good night, and we will see you soon. Take care now.